Mr. Speaker.
The question is that the motion be agreed
Mr. Speaker.
to. Phil Twyford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What a disappointing contribution that was from the typical response from the current National Minister of Housing. Mr. Speaker, the Labour Party will be voting to Select Committee, voting for, at first reading, the Housing Accords and Special Housing Areas Bill. And, sir, we do that in the knowledge that one doesn't lightly support a bill like this that overrides key elements of the Resource Management Act. And this bill is really the latest. It's the latest piece of legislation from the national government that takes powers away from local councils and local communities and gives them to central government. It's one of a long line of provisions that we've seen under this government that actually strips powers from local communities. So in that knowledge, sir, we support it at this stage only to Select Committee, and we support it because the provisions in this bill represent a partial victory for Len Brown and the Auckland Council in the face of the most extraordinary drama queen behaviour from Nick Smith over the last few months, where he turned up in Auckland 3 months ago accusing the Mayor of killing the dreams of Aucklanders, that planning laws in Auckland and the Auckland Plan was strangling the lifeblood out of housing development in Auckland. And we had all sorts of dramas and histrionics from Nick Smith, the Minister of Housing Shortages, as he tried to create the same kind of crisis, the same kind of drama that he's done in every portfolio area he's had over the last few years. ACC was perhaps the worst, and he brought exactly the same approach to housing. But what's very clear from the announcements that we've seen from the government over the last week in housing is that they are utterly spooked by Labor's policy, Labor's Kiwi Build policy, to deliver 10,000 affordable starter homes for first home buyers. That has completely spooked the government. And we know that, sir, because we know that the Herald opinion survey that they did in January showed that 70% of New Zealanders supported Labor's policy of putting 100,000 Kiwi families into their first homes, sir. And that has spooked the National Party, and we've seen a flurry of desperate announcements as they try to recover lost ground. So that's the context for this bill coming to the House today. The National Party's troubled relationship with our country's biggest city, Auckland. They are offside with Aucklanders. Jerry Brownlee is completely offside with Aucklanders when it comes to public transport and the city rail link. And Nick Smith has kindly offered himself as Len Brown's opposition in this year's mayoral election because no one else of any substance is willing to stand against Len Brown. So Nick Smith gallantly offered himself and I think has actually done a pretty good job of alienating Aucklanders on an issue that they desperately care about, and that's affordable housing. So what's the result of all this drama queen activity from Nick Smith over the last few months? What we see today is a cherry-picking of some elements of the Auckland Plan. And that's why I say, sir, that it is a partial victory for Len Brown and the Auckland Council. But to be honest, Nick Smith could have saved everybody a lot of grief if he had simply gone along with Auckland Council's proposal to give the Auckland Unitary Plan legal weight upon notification. So once the plan was notified in September this year, with a lot of grief could have been saved, and the government could have saved a lot of political face, actually, if they had just allowed the new unitary plan, which includes the measures contained in this bill, they could have given that legal weight in September, just as the plan would have had, just as it would have had under the pre-2009 resource management law. But no, Nick Smith has put everyone through a whole lot of drama. So what does the bill do, sir? It creates the framework for the government to negotiate accords with regional councils around the country. They've negotiated one with Auckland Council. Under that accord, it allows special housing areas to be set up with fast-track consenting, and it will have the effect of bringing in, sir, new greenfields land into the supply. of the Auckland housing market, which I think, as most people recognise, is one of many factors behind the high cost of new houses in Auckland. But for the national government, they would like to think that land supply is the be-all and end-all when it comes to solving the housing affordability problem, and that deregulating the planning laws is the main solution. And I think most people realise, sir, that it's not. House prices have gone up 36% in Auckland since National came to office. 36%. And this is the best that National can do. They are rearranging, sir, the deck chairs on the Titanic, tinkering with planning regulations and a whole raft of other things that we'll debate over the next couple of days in relation to state housing. But they think that by simply tinkering with planning regulations under the legislation that allows these so-called housing accords, that it will solve the housing affordability problem. And so that is the fallacy that underlines this bill. This bill will do nothing to guarantee that one more affordable house is built in Auckland. It simply opens up new greenfields land in the supply of land and fast-tracks the consenting procedure. The numbers that they've bandied around for tens of thousands of new houses are simply targets for consenting. They do not guarantee a single new affordable home. And I think Aucklanders will see through this, sir, that it's a desperate attempt by the National Party to regain ground on the housing affordability problem. The housing market is failing, Mr. Speaker. It is failing to build enough affordable homes. It's basically seized up because there is no money to be made currently for developers and builders in building affordable homes. Fast-tracking consenting and bringing new land into the system may be part of the solution, but they will go nowhere near guaranteeing and assuring Aucklanders that they are going to see the production of new affordable houses. We saw yesterday, sir, the unveiling of the new development at Long Bay. An hour's drive from the central city, houses costing between $750,000 and $1 million. Is that National's definition of affordable housing? We've seen at Hobsonville where the Minister talked about affordable housing. Well, does he really think that $700,000 houses an hour's drive from the city, an hour's drive from where all the jobs are, is that National's solution to the affordable housing crisis? It's just simply, sir, not credible. I want to point to, sir, one of the biggest problems with this bill. That's the very, very weak language contained in the housing accord about affordable housing. The accord itself starts by acknowledging that improving the affordability of housing is a complex issue. It requires consideration of wider issues, not all of which will be able to be addressed under this accord. Well, you got that right. Listen to this language, sir, actually in the accord itself. It's talking about when developers are seeking consents for new housing developments. All qualifying developments are required to give consideration to the provision of affordable housing. They don't have to build affordable houses. They simply have to give consideration to the building of affordable housing. The conditions of consent may include requirements for a proportion of development to include affordable housing. They may have to give them. There is nothing in here that requires builders and developers to build affordable housing. It's a joke. It's a charade. If the government was serious about dealing with the affordable housing problem, sir, it would roll up its sleeves and actually work with the private sector and local councils to build affordable housing, which is exactly what Labor will do under its Kiwi Build policy. Look at Hobsonville, look at the Long Bay development. All the economic incentives in the building and development industries are telling developers to build houses that sell for $750,000 because that's the only way they can make a decent cut, a decent margin on those developments. This bill, sir, will be supported by Labor to Select Committee, but we have reservations about it. We have reservations that will require considerable scrutiny at Select Committee about the constraining of the rights of appeal under the Resource Management Act, and we are very sceptical, sir, about whether this will do anything to achieve more affordable housing. It is typical of National's weak, tentative and timid approach to dealing with the issue of affordable housing, and they pretend, sir, that tinkering with the RMA will result in more affordable housing for Aucklanders. We doubt that it will. It requires a serious response by government. They should pick up a hammer and actually build some affordable houses.
I call the honourable member Peseta Sam Lotu Ainga.
Thank you, Mr.
Talofa
Speaker.
lava.